As mix engineers, we know the importance of properly labeled and correctly consolidated recorded tracks. And without those things, it can be nearly impossible to conduct a mixing session. Here we go. So to help out your mix engineer, I wanted to go over a few tips on how to get all of your recorded tracks nice and organized, and most importantly, consolidated so that they each have the same start and end times. Otherwise, when you import those tracks into a mixing session, they won't be in the correct part of the song that you recorded them in. And you worked hard on your arrangements, so let's make sure that that doesn't happen. Step 1. Properly name your audio tracks. There is no standard naming system here, but it is best to name them in such a way that anyone can tell what it is by just reading the name of it. So instead of having audio 1, audio 2, replace those with the instruments that have been recorded on that track. I also find that using the musician or the artist's name works well too. It's also very helpful to include track numbers. This way you are both on the same page on how many tracks are included in the song. I very much appreciate having numbered tracks because it's also a part of how I formulate my mixing rate. Consolidate all tracks. This is probably the most important step and the one that a lot of times gets left out. By consolidating all of your tracks, you are keeping every part of the song in its correct place. If you have a piece of audio with empty spaces on either side of it, this will be imported into a mixing session at the beginning of the song, even though you recorded it to come, say, in the second verse. In order to avoid this, you will need to consolidate all tracks to fill in these spaces to ensure the audio stays in its correct place in the song. Include the rough mix. I encourage all of my clients to print a rough mix and include that as an audio file when sending the multitracks. This will help guide the mix engineer in the same direction that you've been going throughout the creative process of your musical vision for the song. The title of the song should be included here as well as the beats per minute and the key of the song. Bring all tracks to unity gain. Once you have your rough mix printed, bring all faders back to 0. This way, all audio tracks will be exported at the same level they were recorded at. This is also to keep the audio tracks from being too low or too loud once imported into a mixing session. Export audio tracks. The last step is bouncing or exporting your audio to multi-track WAV files. Most all DAWs have a similar exporting process that usually will be found in the File tab of your recording software. Here is where you will choose file type along with sample rate and bit depth. For me personally, it does not matter which you want to choose, but I do recommend that you stay with the sample rate you recorded in. It's also a great idea to create a folder and name it as you did the rough mix along with multi-tracks. You can then compress the file into a zip folder and easily send to your mix engineer. Some file sharing platforms that I like to use are WeTransfer, Google Docs, and Dropbox, which are all free to use. Helpful tips to remember. Tip number 1, you are sending individual audio tracks, also known as multitracks. These are not called stems. Stems are prints of individual instruments that have been grouped together. For example, drum stems are a stereo print of that entire group. Guitar stems are a stereo print of all of the guitars. Unless otherwise specified, you will be sending the individual multitracks, not the group print down stems. Tip number 2. Let your mix engineer know beforehand if you want any additional editing such as vocal tuning. Tip number 3. Be sure to include your DI tracks. This goes for bass and any sort of guitars that you have also direct in. Tip number 4, make sure to print your MIDI tracks into audio before sending it to mixing. And tip number 5, include titles of reference songs for your mix in the email with your multitracks. And any other details or information that you need the mix engineer to know to help them better reach the sound that you're trying to achieve. I hope this guide has been helpful. If you did find something beneficial from it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Lots of new content coming out, so I don't want you to miss any of it. I've also made this amazing playlist that's filled with mixing tips and techniques that have already helped so many. All right, y'all, thanks so much for watching. We'll talk soon.